In Pennsylvania during the 19th century, there was a Bible student movement where groups of students gathered together to systematically analyze the Bible and compare it to what churches were currently teaching. Their findings were published in a journal they called the Watchtower, announcing Jehovah's Kingdom. Charles Taze Russell was one of the students who became the editor of the Watchtower, but he is not considered the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses. Instead, they believe Jesus is the founder of their organization and view Charles Russell only as an instrument who was used to point the way to Jehovah. After the origination of the movement, the years 1917 through 1932 brought several splits and resulted in a group called the Watchtower Society rebranding to Jehovah's Witnesses in 1931. By the end of the 20th century, they had a following of 6 million witnesses. The name Jehovah's Witnesses was adopted because 1. They believe it identifies their God, 2. Describes their mission, and 3. They believe they are imitating Jesus as the faithful and true witnesses. Worldwide, there are 8.4 million witnesses practicing in 240 lands. It is the second largest growing religion in Mexico, and Jehovah's Witness practices are banned or restricted in Singapore, Russia, China, Vietnam, and Muslim-majority countries. Within the United States, there are 1.2 million witnesses who make up 0.7% of the population, 13,026 congregations, and within Long Beach there are greater than 2,500 witnesses. Demographics show that Jehovah's Witnesses are between the ages of 30 to 49 years old, female compared to male, married and never married, white, Latino, and Black. And then also interesting to note is the economic impact Jehovah's Witnesses have within the city of Long Beach. Due to their annual conventions that are held every year, in which 150,000 to 180,000 Jehovah's Witnesses gather and generate about $64.5 million in revenue, and the city is able to collect about $335,000 of transient tax. The infographic that you see on this slide show a visual representation of these demographics. As you can see in the left-hand side, it is pretty split between the white, Black, and Hispanic populations. And then also you will see that the demographics show that they are dedicated in their religious beliefs and practices. Jehovah's Witnesses are notably identified within the general public as groups of believers who are consistently evangelizing door to door and distributing their Awake and the Watchtower pamphlets. Jehovah's Witnesses believe the Bible is their sole guide for living purposeful lives and learning about Jehovah, and recognize some parts of the Bible as not literal, but symbolic. They do not believe in the Holy Trinity due to no scriptural basis for it, but do believe Jesus is the Son of God. For Jehovah's Witnesses, salvation is not earned by good works alone, but through baptism. Practices like drunkenness, sexual immorality, stealing, blood transfusions, same-sex relations, smoking, and misuse of drugs are discouraged, as they are condemned in the Bible as things that will contaminate their minds and bodies. Worship is done through practices such as prayer, religious services, Bible reading and meditation, but do not include worship of idols, crosses, or statues. Holidays, including birthdays, are not celebrated as they are considered pagan and claim there is no scriptural precedent in the Bible of Christians celebrating such holidays. Their organizational structure within Kingdom Halls are managed by unsalaried elders who are not classified as clergy, no tithing is collected, and the entire religion is overseen by the governing body at the world headquarters in New York. Lastly, Jehovah's Witnesses believe in no divisions, ethnic, class, racial, or social, and allow for members to have personal choice as guided by their quote-unquote Bible-trained conscience.
Jehovah's Witnesses believe that death is the termination of the conscious existence, and those who die before the day of judgment will be awakened by the call of Jehovah. There is a strong belief that within the resurrection lies hope, and the righteous will be with Christ. They also believe that death and the dead are nothing to be afraid of and should not be viewed with fear. Providing end-of-life care to a Jehovah's Witness is relatively straightforward. Jehovah's Witnesses do not participate in religious rituals prior to or after death. As an individual approaches the end of their life, they may wish to hold a Bible study to discuss spiritual topics. Family and loved ones will often be present to support the ill person. Pain relief is completely acceptable, and everything should be done to sustain life as long as there is no unnecessary suffering endured by the patient. The use of Western medicine is the primary choice for Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses may choose to use folk medicine, but are cautious that there is no spiritual aspect to the remedy. The use of machinery to sustain life is a personal choice that the individual makes independent of the religion. Organ donations can also be a matter of choice, but all blood must be drained from the organ before any transplant. There are clear guidelines around the use and acceptance of blood. Blood transfusions are not permitted or encouraged, as this is viewed as going against the Word of God. It is important for a social worker to understand how taboo blood transfusions are for Jehovah's Witnesses. It is the responsibility of the social worker to take into consideration their religious beliefs and working with the witness and keeping their treatment plan confidential. Members of this religion are often shunned and can become disfellowshipped for receiving the blood transfusion. Being disfellowshipped prevents an individual from speaking to any active member that is not an elder, and even from participating in spiritual worship with their own family. Blood transfusions for children of Jehovah's Witnesses can be controversial. In cases where the child is under the age of 12, treatment cannot be conducted without the permission of the parent. However, a medical practitioner can ignore this refusal and administer a life-saving blood transfusion under the Children's Act, Act 38 of 2005. This act states that the best interest of the child is paramount regarding all decisions made on their behalf. In 2003, a case was heard before the Supreme Court concerning a pediatrician who applied for an urgent order to allow a life-saving blood transfusion for a child whose parents were refusing due to religious beliefs. The court ruled that the denial of life-saving medical treatment was unconstitutional under the grounds that all children have a right to life. In cases of emergencies, the doctors need no approval to override parental wishes. In absence of an emergency, the decision falls into the hands of the courts. A child who is over the age of 12 years may consent to his or her own medical treatment without assistance from a parent. In the case of a surgical operation, such a child may only give consent if he or she is duly assisted by a parent or guardian.
Jehovah's Witnesses funerals are held at a funeral home, private home, or place of worship. An open casket is optional to the family during the funeral ceremony. There are no rituals performed to prepare the body before a funeral. Funerals are a time to show empathy, comfort the bereaved, and Jehovah's Witnesses do not arrange funerals that are lavish and expensive. Non-members are welcome to attend funeral services. The congregation elder conducts the service where a talk is given referencing the Bible regarding death and the resurrection. The service can last up to 40 minutes long, and during the service, there is a song Jehovah's Witnesses usually sing from the Bible found in Job chapter 14, verse 12 through 15. This passage from the Bible is found to be comforting and hope for the resurrection. You will now get a chance to hear a clip of the song usually played during a funeral.
Life like a mist, a mist for just a day, then disappears tomorrow. All that we own can quickly fade away, replaced with tears and sorrow.
Cremation, body burials, and embalming is acceptable for Jehovah Witnesses. Cremation is seen as expediting the natural process of the human body turning into dust, which is not harmful. Jehovah Witnesses avoids customs and practices such as wakekeeping or death anniversaries. Autopsies are usually not performed unless required by law.
Much like their general beliefs, Jehovah's Witnesses base their beliefs on grief on the Bible. They emphasize and try to normalize grief reactions by emphasizing emotions rather than celebrations. In order to normalize death and grief reactions, Jehovah's Witnesses emphasize it as a time to show empathy rather than engage in lively festivities and celebrations. In other words, Jehovah's Witnesses do not engage in celebratory wakes or other types of celebrations after the direct funeral. Emotional expression is highly encouraged in order to process the loss of a loved one. Based on personal communication with Rena Terrizzo, a facilities role-play leader during congregation at the Gardena Kingdom Hall, she mentioned that Jehovah's Witnesses treat all deaths, including tragic death, the same, and believe that the best way to grieve is to follow the scriptures in the Bible regarding death and loss. Since emotional expression is highly encouraged by Jehovah's Witnesses, there are many people available to help them process the loss. For example, individuals are referred to the Bible as a form of support, and in particular, scriptures regarding loss and death are referred to those grieving. Members are also encouraged to seek guidance and support from the elders. Bereavement counselors are also available to Jehovah's Witnesses within their respective Kingdom Hall. Jehovah's Witnesses also offer prayers to one another to help process the emotions that are related to the loss and grief they are experiencing. Lastly, Jehovah's Witnesses also offer support within one another during a time of grief and loss.
Jehovah's Witnesses believe once someone dies, their life has ended completely and they cease to exist. The religion compares death to a long sleep, and once death occurs, the individual is gone, along with feelings and memories. In an interview with an elder at a Kingdom Hall in Palmdale, who I will refer to as Elder Chavez, stated believing death is a long sleep brings more comfort to the surviving as it eliminates the wondering of the unknown. Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe in immortal souls or spirits and do not practice honoring or remembering the dead throughout the years, as they believe fearing and worshiping the dead distracts from wholehearted love for Jehovah. Unique to the Jehovah's Witness view of afterlife is their view that the idea of hell is an insult to Jehovah. Burning is viewed as a pagan action or concept, and instead they believe the lake of fire mentioned in the Bible is a symbolic mention of the everlasting death of those who are unworthy of resurrection. Also, Jehovah's Witnesses believe heaven is not where the dead go, but it is only reserved for 144,000 anointed saints who will enter after the resurrection to spend eternity with Jehovah, while the remaining righteous live on a permanently restored paradise on earth. Once Jehovah is victorious in the war of Armageddon, which is when earth is cleansed of wickedness, the dead will rise from the grave as a whole person. Elder Chavez stated, quote unquote, "Our hope lies in a future resurrection to paradise on earth based on God's original purpose for Adam and Eve."
Jehovah Witnesses have advocated for the right to choose alternative strategies in medicine that are acceptable for members. They have helped to remind healthcare professionals that individuals have rights to refuse or accept treatment based on religious beliefs. Jehovah's Witnesses' refusal of blood transfusions have helped to develop safe and effective alternative strategies such as minimizing blood loss, conserving red blood cells, stimulating blood production, and conserving lost blood. It is important for social workers to respect Jehovah's Witnesses' beliefs and help to advocate for their rights to choose whether or not to accept treatment. Bringing awareness to and attention to issues of cultural competency reduces health disparities and enhances clinical care as it enables providers to deliver services that are respectful and responsive to health beliefs and practices. It is recommended for social workers and other providers to engage patients in dialogue about their beliefs while providing information about treatment and alternatives. Jehovah's Witnesses' beliefs help to comfort individuals who have lost a loved one by offering their support through Bible study, It is their hope for the resurrection that brings comfort to families who deal with death and loss.